Well, justice prevailed as the Supreme Court unanimously voted in President Trump's favor, restoring him to the 2024 presidential ballot in Colorado. Here's Trump's reaction to that ruling yesterday.
You cannot take somebody out of a race because an opponent would like to have it that way. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's the leading candidate, whether it was the leading candidate or a candidate that was well down on the totem pole. You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well.
Joining me now is Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall. And scheduled to appear here was Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, who led that fight, but we're struggling to make a connection with him. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Marshall, about Rokita leading that charge in support of former President Trump's right to appear on the Colorado ballot. I can't believe we're having this discussion in America that we have to, oh, yes, your opponents tried to kick you off of the ballot and you get to stay on because that's the way we do things in America. Give me your reaction to that it got all the way to the Supreme Court and the massive rebuke once it got there.
I think it was a remarkable victory, not only for President Trump, but also for the voters of our country to be able to have faith in the election process, to know that their voice can be heard. General Rokita was able to lead multiple states, including Alabama, to be able to push back on the efforts of Colorado to keep President Trump off the ballot. The reality is this was a 9-0 decision, a unanimous court that spoke very clearly, that said that there was no ability to use the 14th Amendment to be able to keep President Trump off the ballot. And most importantly, that was not the role of a state election official in being able to do so.
Now, you penned a recent op-ed in Newsweek defending the Supreme Court's unanimous decision because the court is applying the law and not left-wingers' feelings. The Attorney General of, or the Secretary of State, I should say, of Colorado was out there saying that she should be able to throw off a quote-unquote insurrectionist. But the problem is President Trump has never been charged with insurrection, nor has he been convicted of insurrection. So Democrats want the ability to make up charges against their political rivals and have them thrown off of ballots. And we can't allow that in the United States, can we?
No, we can't. And in fact, what we know is the majority of Americans recognize that the charges against President Trump are political in nature. That President Biden can't, through his record, defeat President Trump in an election. I think it's a foregone conclusion that he'll be the nominee. And when we see election officials like that in Colorado or in the state of Maine tend to be able to use the resources of their office to deprive their citizens and being able to vote appropriately, then we know they've gone too far. Again, 9-0 decision from this court. I think that sends a very strong message about the abuses the left will use to try to gain their agenda, and proud the court was able to stand strong and be able to support the ability of President Trump to make his case to the American people and allow them to decide who's our next president.
All right, I'm being told that we have made a connection with Attorney General Rokita, so I want to get his sense of things. First off, comment on the victory, the 9-0 victory, sir. The Supreme Court, a fight that you led. What is your reaction?
You know, I'm really grateful for Alabama, Steve Marshall, for joining us in this effort as well. The fact of the matter, Steve and I and many of your attorneys general are in court every week, stopping the overreach of the federal government. But there are some times, some rare instances when our founders provided for Congress to take the lead, and deciding what an insurrection is and deciding whether or not a president or vice presidential candidate can be on the ballot is one of those rare times. And so that's what we hammered on in our brief. And I'm pleased that the court really focused on it and made it the foundation of its opinion. And yes, it was 9-0. And I remember calling it on Newsmax a few months ago and my staff saying, sir, why did you do that? Why would you ever call something 9-0? Because it's happened so rarely. But if you think about it, this was so obvious and so full of Hoosier common sense. I really don't think it could have been anything but 9-0.
Well, AG Rokita, I want to ask you one more question before we wrap this up. It's, of course, Super Tuesday, and we've got people out there heading out of the polls. What are you looking for? What storylines are you looking for as the folks are voting today?
Well, wherever I go in Indiana, and you can tell I'm in the car right now, traveling the state, and I think Hoosiers are a lot like most Americans, and they want their country back. And they see time and time again it being taken away from them through the weaponization of government, whether it's the Trump examples or even examples where AGs are being targeted with their professional law licenses because he can't get them at the ballot box. And so I think what's going to happen after Super Tuesday is what's going to happen in the fall, and it's going to be a landslide for President Trump.
A.G. Marshall, state of Alabama is voting today. What are you watching?
Yeah, I think Alabamans are voting with their pocketbooks. They are saying we're tired of the inflation. They want to be able to see their borders secure and ultimately their city safe. And I think one of the things that we will see as a result of Alabama's votes today is Alabama standing strong for conservative values, understanding that that's the way to rectify the problems we're seeing in our country. And I think we plan on being able to play a large part in restoring President Trump to the presidency.
Attorneys General Steve Marshall and Todd Rokita. Gentlemen, thank you for the time. Appreciate it.